Hi guys, I'm Chantal from Fresh is Real, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to bake a gluten-free vegan sourdough bread recipe that does not contain psyllium, chia seeds, or flax. So keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to make it. So this bread recipe is actually very easy to make because it contains less than 8 ingredients. It is allergy friendly because it does not contain nuts, soy, it does not have dairy, does not have eggs, and does not contain wheat either, so it's gluten-free. And the reason we're not using psyllium, chia seeds, or flax, it's because so many people can't consume those ingredients. Today we're going to use sorghum flour, tapioca starch, and tiger nut flour. And tiger nut is not an actual nut, and so it is allergen friendly, and it is very safe for many types of diets. So if you're not familiar with tiger nut flour, do your research before you use it, and if you can't consume tiger nut, you can replace it with something else that is safe for you. Ingredients, it's very important to sift your flour because especially starches tend to clump up, so it's better to give them a little sift to prevent that. And today I'm using sorghum. If you cannot consume sorghum, you can use a combination of white and brown rice flour. And again, if you can't consume rice, you would have to make your starter, your wild yeast, with sorghum flour and or another flour that's safe for you. So that was 1.5 cups of sorghum flour. We're going to include 1 cup of tiger nut flour. It's a very nice light flour and it's wonderful to bake with. And the person I'm actually testing this recipe for mentioned that they wanted to use tapioca flour, but I'm pretty confident that you could use arrowroot starch, either in combination, half and half, or in place of. So that was 1 cup of tapioca flour. The reason we use so much is because I find that without the psyllium husk or the chia seeds or flax, I find that we need something to create a little bit of lightness to the loaf, and typically starches will work well for that. So I'm just going to sift the ingredients. Again, we're doing this because we don't want the dry ingredients to clump up. We will give them another mix once in the bowl. While I'm doing this, I just have to say thank you to all my new followers on YouTube. And I do have a Facebook baking group that is also growing. So there's definitely a need for these recipes for sure. So thank you so much for all the support. I appreciate it very much. It actually challenges me when somebody asks me a question, they're looking for a safe recipe. I actually really truly do enjoy finding safe alternatives for people that eat similarly to me. So I eat for sure 100% gluten-free. I eat a mostly plant-based diet, but we don't have nuts or peanuts in our home because my oldest son has allergies. So to the flour, I'm adding 1 tablespoon of coconut flour and just a little bit more than half a tablespoon of a fine gray sea salt. Half a tablespoon works well, but I find like this loaf could use just a little bit more. I will include all the measurements to the ingredients I'm using today below in the description. And if you have any questions, just ask them below in the comments as well. So we're gonna give this a mix just to make sure that all the ingredients are distributed throughout. And this is a starter that I fed last night and again this morning, but there's more than 1 cup. So I am going to just scoop out what I need. And I'll scoop it out in another cup just to show you the actual 1 cup. So it's nice and lively. Can you hear it? I'll put it. It's full of activity. So, and it smells yeasty and good. A good wild starter will not smell bad. If it smells horrible, it might not be healthy wild starter. So far we've got sorghum flour, we got tiger nut flour, tapioca flour, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt. We're gonna add the 1 cup of starter. And this is a brown rice starter. Again, you could use a sorghum starter, you could use a buckwheat starter if you wanted to use buckwheat in place of rice flour and or sorghum flour. Actually, I might keep it here. I have a total of 1.5 cups of water. This recipe works well with 1 1/4, and if it's a little bit too dry, use the full 1.5 cup. So I'm actually gonna pour my water into here because I wanna rinse out all my good yeast. So this is 1 cup. This water is warm. If you are in a hurry and you want this to rise a little bit faster, using warm water as opposed to just room temperature water will work faster. If your home is warm because it's summertime where you are now, it will work a lot faster as well. It's almost strawberry season. Well, actually, it is strawberry season right now. We are in Ottawa, Canada, and so I'm very excited to use some of my rhubarb finally and make some strawberry rhubarb jam. I do have a recipe, so I will include the link to that below. And the previous recipe on Fresh is Real was a vegetable chickpea stew. And when I made it, it was actually still really, really cold here. So it was the perfect, comfortable, filling, nutritious meal. So if you like plant-based meals that do not contain allergens, you can give that recipe a try as well. If you cannot eat chickpeas, you can just replace the chickpeas with another safe vegetable. That's the beauty of eating mostly plant-based, is that if you can't have one ingredient, just replace it with something else. It's not complicated. People overcomplicate their food sometimes. It's not necessary. So actually, I'm mixing this and I'm just making sure that there's no like dry bits in the bottom, and there still is a little bit. And I still have a 1/4 cup of water left. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just put half of it, not all of it. So just a little bit more than 1 1/4 cups. It's better to be a little bit less than too much. The flour will absorb the water in time. It is a little bit on the runnier side. Maybe that's because today I'm using sorghum and not rice flour. Rice flour is actually very absorbent flour. You will witness if it works or not. And if it does not, then we'll have to try this again. So I will leave this here. I will cover it with something. It could be plastic wrap and or just a clean dish towel, and we'll check it in a few hours to see what it looks like. We will most likely transfer it to a bread baking pan because it is on the moist side. It's not a dough that you can handle with your hands for sure. And then my plan is to bake it using the bread pan placed inside of a Dutch oven into the oven. But I will explain all those steps again in a little bit. All right, so it's been about 1 hour since we left the dough to rise, and the sun just came out and my kitchen is warming up, so it's definitely helping this dough mixture. But I thought because it has more liquid, so a higher hydration level, I think I'm gonna go ahead and transfer it to the bread pan right away, and then we'll let it rise for another 1 to 2 hours, and then we'll bake it. If I touch the dough right now, I can see that some of the water has definitely absorbed. It's still a very soft dough for sure. But maybe that'll work out just right. I've tried different methods, but definitely because this recipe is simpler, doing it this way tends to yield a better loaf. So if you look at the mixture itself, it's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch from the top. We'll let it rise a little bit more. to then bake it. Very shortly, I will be preheating my oven. You want to do it at least half an hour to 45 minutes before you're ready to bake. And when I preheat my oven, I will be preheating my Dutch oven at the same time. And then again, I mentioned it earlier, but I will be placing this into the Dutch oven, into the larger oven. We're gonna let this dough rise another hour for sure, maybe longer if I can. Again, I want to try to bake this bread before I go pick up my kids at school. Right, so I think this loaf is ready to bake. As you can see, the space at the top is less because the dough has increased in size. My oven is nice and warm. It's been preheating for at least 45 minutes, maybe even almost an hour. I'm going to take out the Dutch oven from the super hot oven. Important to be careful because everything is extremely hot. And then I'm gonna put it here so you can sort of see. And then we're just gonna carefully put, and I don't want to burn myself here, the bread pan loaf directly in the Dutch oven. And now we're gonna move fairly quick because we want to trap that heat. So I'm gonna put the lid on, I'm gonna put it back into the oven. And then I'm gonna take a peek in 25 minutes to see what it looks like. Because this dough is a little bit different, I wanna keep the moisture inside while it's baking, because if not, it creates a very crispy crust, and sometimes that's hard to chew, especially for little ones that might be eating this bread. We are at the 25-minute mark, and I'm just gonna take a quick peek at the bread to see how it's doing. I'm hoping it's doing good because remember, this is an experiment. I'm hoping that with the sorghum flour, it might be a little bit lighter in texture, but we'll see. All right, I'm just gonna quickly show you what it looks like. It looks really good. It did rise. It has a bit of a cracked top, but that could be due to the fact that it doesn't have psyllium, chia seeds, or flax. To help gel everything together. So we'll bake it for another 25 minutes uncovered, and then we will check what it looks like then. While the loaf continues to bake, I just want to go over a few quick little notes. If you found this recipe, I'm super happy that you did, but if let's say you've never made a gluten-free sourdough starter before and you would like to try, I will make sure to include some links down below with some additional videos and recipes that you can take a look at. And once you do, if you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know. I would be more than happy to help you along the way. And if you're still not sure about psyllium husk because it's an ingredient you've never used, perhaps you can, I don't know, I was gonna say try flax first to see how you can handle it. And if you have used psyllium, but now you've been told that you should avoid that ingredient because you have maybe constipation issues or your body doesn't eliminate like it should, then just maybe try this recipe and perhaps it will work very well for you too. But if you do consume psyllium in gluten-free vegan baked goods and you do so frequently, make sure to drink a lot of water. Lots and lots of fluids will help you flush everything out and get things moving along and hopefully make you feel normal. So it's okay to consume it, but don't overdo it because it's like everything else, everything in moderation is key. We're at the 50-minute mark for this loaf recipe. I am going to take a peek at it to see how it's doing. The second half of the baking was done uncovered. I find that because it does not have certain ingredients, it's baking up darker than what I'm actually used to. So if you can see, I'm actually gonna call this done because if I go any longer, it's gonna get really, really dark. 50 minutes for this loaf at 450 is sufficient. In the future, maybe I could try to reduce the temperature a little bit, but it's actually looking good. And as you can see, it did rise a little bit. And I let the dough rise for 3 hours as opposed to 4. Would it have made a difference? I'm not sure. Probably 3 is enough. You could go as long as 4 or until your dough does increase in size. But as for baking, 50 minutes I think is sufficient. Really, you want to let it cool for, I don't know, 10 minutes up to 30 minutes in the pan if it's too, if it's stuck to your pan. So I'm actually gonna set it on its side And we will check on it in a bit and we'll proceed to slice it. So I did take out the bread from the loaf pan a few minutes after I baked it, just because I want it to cool properly and I don't want the bottom to get wet and soggy from being in the pan, and I have to leave soon. So this will be better to let it cool on the rack like this for probably a few hours. All right, so I just got back from picking up my kids at school and the loaf has cooled enough for me to slice it, which is perfect. I'm gonna grab a cutting board. We're gonna see what it looks like inside. Another important detail when making a very simplified bread recipe like this one is if you can use the best ingredients possible, such as organic flours or grains, it will create a much better loaf. So make sure your flour is fresh, and if you're milling it yourself, just make sure your grains or your seeds are fresh. So I'm gonna give it a go. I know it's a crispier loaf on the outside, but oh, it's actually very nice. You know what? I'm pleased with this because I wasn't loving the denseness of the rice flour, but there's something with sorghum that just creates such a nice loaf. And I say I prefer sorghum, but keep in mind I've made this many, many times with brown rice and white rice, and it does yield a very beautiful loaf. If you can tolerate buckwheat flour, that is also another substitution that would work in place of the rice flour, but I'm very, very pleased with this loaf. It's still actually a bit warm to the touch, so it'll be really good to taste right now. Like I said before, it's strawberry and rhubarb season, so a little bit of fresh jam would be good, but right now I don't have any, so I will improvise. I have raspberry jam, and you can use your favorite buttery topping that you want, or you don't have to. You can eat it however you wish, but I'm just gonna put a little bit of butter and a little bit of raspberry jam, and I'm going to give this bread recipe a try. I'm actually very excited. I will be posting this recipe and all the details in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna give this bread a taste, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comment box below. This is the best one so far. This is a good snack. Who needs filling a husk? It's really good without. Thought the crust would be too crispy, but it's actually really, really nice. I hope you try it. It's good.